episode of Ludic Loungecast. So thank you for being a part of this, John.
But I'm here every week.
I know, but I'm still thanking you for being here because this is a choice. You chose to sit in your room and Zoom.
Well, it helps that you're oh so pretty.
Oh, I bet you say that to all your redhead co-hosts.
Well, yes, that is true. But this is also the second YouTube exclusive. Not as exclusive because we're going to do the audio one anyway. We're going to be on YouTube again with this. So, we're very excited and very pleased.
And we're going to try not to have any technical difficulties this time around.
That is the hope and the plan. It did leave us to have some very fun editing challenges. By you. We, I mean Anthony.
Thank you.
Because he pulled it off incredibly well, if I do say so myself.
Oh, shit.
Well, I'm a cheap date. So, Anthony.
Yes, sir.
We've got a special thing to get into this week. What have we got this week?
Oh, boy, John. What don't we have this week? We are going to talk about today loyal Ludiac loungers and maybe some new folks out there if you're joining us. Thank you.
Every Ludic Loungecast is somebody's first.
Absolutely.
Like so believe.
So we were fortunate enough, John, to get an advanced copy of a new comic for Image Comics called Commanders in Crisis.
That is correct, Anthony. Here at the Ludic Lounge, we'd like to give a big thanks to co-creator and writer Steve Orlando for including us in the Guerrilla social media team to get the word out with this advanced review. So thank you, Steve. We greatly appreciate it. And we hope our review does your work some justice.
Absolutely. We sure hope it does it justice because this is such a great first issue into a new world, into a new cast of characters that I am so excited to see unfold. I'm so excited to see where they take this world, where the story goes, where the narrative goes, the character growth, the character development. Because, John, one of the things I really much enjoyed in this first copy, this advanced issue we got, was just the characters in it.
Yes.
So why don't we start there, John?
Yeah, just with like a character breakdown and a little synopsis of what this little story is about.
Absolutely.
That I can do. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are familiar with superheroes, the Marvel Universe, the DC Universe, this should feel a little at home, but it's going to be a little different. We are joining the Crisis Command, a group of superheroes who may or may not seem a little familiar to you in some regards. We have certain analogs, but these are all new, all original characters doing their all new, all original things. And they are gathered from across the multiverse.
Absolutely. And what I loved about this is, and again, in the first issue in the introduction that we're given by Dan DiDio?
Dan DiDio. Dan was the former co-publisher of DC Comics. I believe he was executive editor for the longest time. Dan recently was fired from DC, if I recall, but he left DC not too long ago. But Dan was in part or had a guiding editorial hand on a lot of DC for the last 20 years. He was the chief architect for the New 52, along with his co-publisher Jim Lee, who's still with DC. So a lot of the big events from Infinite Crisis to Final Crisis and everything in the New 52, was under Dan's co-editorial gaze. And he's a big DC fan, and a lot of what is going on in Commanders in Crisis is, I think it's going to be homaging a lot of the multiversal stuff that we've seen in superhero stuff.
Absolutely.
But I think more than anything, Commanders in Crisis is leaning on the DC analog connection. You see that with the references to the change in sky color. Here it's violet, and DC, whenever there's a crisis, the skies turn red.
Yeah.
And that's when shit about to get real.
And speaking of stuff that's about to get real, the reason I bring up this introduction, and as you always do when it comes to comic books, John, dropped your knowledge down on this podcast, on our loyal listeners, is one of the things he mentioned that I picked up on that I made me sit and pause before I even continued into the comic was that he says that think of how hard it is to create this kind of a multiverse while multiverses diverging with characters you already know, right? Your Supermans, your Batman, you know, from the Marvel side on Spider-Man with the beautiful Miles Morales movie we just had.
Yes.
Think how hard it is to do it with this known character and known quantity. Now amplify that, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but now amplify that by exponentially. I won't even give you a number for that on characters that you don't know, that you're trying to just introduce to the public, trying to put it out in a comics cosmere, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think, yeah, Steve and his artist David Tinto and the rest of the crew here are up to that challenge. I mean, they come up with very exciting, interesting characters. Anthony, you want to get into the breadth of what we have on table here with the Crisis Command themselves?
Absolutely. So one of the main characters that I want to start off talking about, John, is I want to talk about Prize Fighter.
Yes. Now, he is very much in my head, he was a Superman analog, seeing as, you know, he's in a circus fighter, circus strongman kind of type look, you know, even though he's bare armed, but he's got the chest. It looks like, you know, he's got the belt. He looks like he could belong in a circus, which, you know, for those who are curious about a little comics history, that's why, you know, Superman still has the underwear outside. You know, it's, you know, from way back when, you know, when the circuses still existed and you had, you know, strong men out there. That's more or less what their outfits look like. So in visual terms, by putting, you know, these superheroes in outfits like that, it's meant to convey, oh, these are strong individuals.
Yeah. Now, John, Prize Fighter's look, and again, this is just a credit to how beautifully illustrated and beautifully colored. Now, forgive me for not knowing the proper terms, but I'm learning as I go along. So, Prize Fighter's look reminded me so much of Superman from Young Justice, or Superboy, excuse me, from Young Justice, the animated TV show of the mid-2010s, roughly, if I'm getting my time frame.
It's still active, thankfully.
Yeah, actually, it's very much is still active. It reminded me a lot of that character, black hair, Caucasian, short sleeve shirts, but it was that mixed with a lot of like golden age, or even maybe further back than that, kind of like, well, at the time, Captain Marvel, but now Shazam, his look, with the cape, how the cape flows off the shoulder. So it's paying a lot of, in my mind, homage to those old, huge character superstars of yore when it comes to the comic book world.
I agreed, and his power set is just as equally as an homage to my opinion. You know, he's a bruiser, he's a brawler type. So, and his powers are dependent on how strong the crowd hopes he is. So it's leaning into the showmanship, I guess, side of what being a hero would be, or what being, you know, a person in the public eye as a sports figure, you know, because I imagine it's a little bit Muhammad Ali too.
And I'm glad you brought up Muhammad Ali, because Prize Fighter's look, he wears essentially looks like a prize fight belt. Now, John, you and I being lovers of the boxing realm, I know it tickled me, so I must assume that it tickled you so much seeing this for the first time.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's fun. You know, that's what I think I got most, is that he feels fun. It's just, you get that, you know, you're going to get a knockdown, drag him out with Prize Fighter. And I hope that's something that this series is going to lead to, because, you know, you can't give a character like that, you know, the thought, or let me rephrase. It's more, you can't give him the setup to be a big fighter like that and not give him a big fight.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Because, again, we're going to not spoil this, folks, because we want you to actively go out and pick up this comic when it releases, when it drops this October. So we're not going to spoil and say, you know, what fights do happen or do not happen. But the fights that Prize Fighter is in this issue it just seems so minor because again he's just like smacking dudes around like they're nothing compared to him, a la Superman, if you will. How Superman's always having to treat the world as a cardboard box, essentially a cardboard cutouts.
Now, Anthony, there are some things about Prizefighter that you want to talk about, because, and I'm glad that you brought up how careful Superman tends to be. Do you think that applies necessarily to Prizefighter? Because there's some things that came up in our off-mic discussions that I think would be probably relevant to that.
So I don't think he is as careful as Superman is regarding like I have to treat everyone around me like they're made from cardboard, made of tissue paper. Because in one scene where he is rescuing a building full of firefighters, again, we're not going to say why he's doing that, but he is rescuing this. He is literally punching holes in walls, destroying property to make sure that all of these firefighters get out. So what it reminds me of as he's doing this with the admiration of all of the people watching and looking by.
They're literally cheering his name too.
They're literally cheering his name. It reminded me so much of Booster Gold. so much of Booster Gold, John. Who, to those who are new to the program or maybe new to me nerding out about comic books, I love Booster Gold. He is my grade A top choice for any superhero on the DC side. So the fact that his powers perceivably are based on the fact that he needs this admiration is fantastic and just blows my mind.
And I noted it in my review, which, by the time this airs should be online and will contain all the information you need to go to your local comic book store and get this series pre-ordered. You can subscribe to the whole series, a single issue if you are so inclined, but we highly encourage you to check out this whole series in its entirety for however long it goes. I don't know how long it goes, but back to the discussion at hand. I noticed that too. I didn't make the Booster Gold connection, which I love you for. Honestly, it's like, that is the most brilliant. It's like Booster Gold by way of Superman. And Muhammad Ali, which is fantastic. But I am curious how much of a point of contention that is going to be. Is he like an attention addict? Is Prizefighter wanting? Is he going to put people in harm's way just so that he can feel both satisfied in the attention he's getting and the actual need his powers require for that attention? I think it's going to set up a lot of interesting dynamics if that's where we're going with this.
And then there's one thing that I do want to mention about Prizefighter, about who he is and his makeup, is he is, from all appearances, openly gay. He is an openly gay superhero, which I love the holy hell out of personally. And again, we don't want to spoil the scene or anything. It's shown and it's tested by the crowd around him, by a certain individual. And this individual's testing him, saying like, "Oh, this is a little odd." Again, paraphrasing, of course. And Prizefighter just turns around and says, "Hey, I just saved your ass from a burning building. You really want to fight me on this?" Which I love. Again, paraphrasing. He didn't exactly quite say that, but I loved that aspect of it. He's open. He is proud. And he's not going to let anyone talk him down for being who he is. And I love that about him.
Yeah, that comes from, I will gladly defer if it's, more influence outside of the writer, but Steve Orlando is openly bisexual and is always, willing to, write the world as it is, full of different kinds of people. And, the group that we have here in the Crisis Command, it shows they are a diverse walk of individuals that come from all shapes and forms. And maybe we'll see some, maybe that'll create some conflict. Maybe it won't create as much conflict as us two white guys would probably expect, but, I appreciate it as well. It's an accurate representation and shows that there's so much more that the superhero genre can do, than what is limited when you come to like corporate comics, I guess, or corporate superhero comics. Cause I don't think you could necessarily push Superman in this kind of direction. Not anymore. I mean, and plus, Superman's too tied to Lois anyway.
But it's not even just based off of that, John. It's based on the fact, which is why I appreciate that this is, again, I'm calling it independent, because to me, from my very nominal standpoint, not being super in depth when it comes to comic books, is you have DC, you have Marvel, so anyone outside of those two realms to me are independent or a third party, if you will.
Yeah.
Now, this being an Image Comics property, that's what I love, and that they're not just taking these normal characters, that they can go outside of the box and do these things and actually portray real life characters, and that they don't have to be written in a box.
Exactly.
As far as their stories continue, as far as their character developments continue. And I'm glad you mentioned that they are written and drawn and created based off of real life, because one of our next characters, John Sear,
Yes.
she is the wonderful person there. Scarlett Davis is her name. I'll have you talk about her powers more, but she is Black, and she's proud on this. In her splash panel, when you're first introduced to her character, she is standing mightily in front of all of these foes with her powers and just owning the scene and owning the panel.
Agreed.
And beautifully done, beautifully drawn, beautifully colored. Now why don't you go into her power set, if you will, John, and what makes Seer so special?
So Seer her powers involve quantum moments. It looks like she's able to harness time in certain ways, and she also suffers these episodes where she experiences moments in times that have yet to occur. And to go back to our mention that this is reflective of real people in the real world. I equated these quantum moments to like a neurological disorder, like epileptic fits.
Yeah.
And
I really appreciated that aspect of it from the actual physical review that you read that I looked at before it was published, because as editor-in-chief, I get to have that peek behind the curtain.
I know, right? Nice.
And I really appreciated your equating it to like epilepsy or something, because that's what it appeared to be. A few panels down the road, after she's unleashing this power, she essentially passes out because the power just is overwhelming her physical body. So it's almost as if she goes into an epileptic seizure, if you will.
Or she has like chronic exhaustion or something. It's
Exactly.
something that is not. She's not able to harness her abilities as well as she probably could have. And there's some implications as to why. And another character, our de facto leader, Frontier, implies that maybe that there's some of her actions might have been in a part of that, but like we've said before, we only get the first issue. This is a setup. This is an introduction. This is the walk up to the mystery, which, once we get through our character breakdowns, we'll get into what exactly that mystery is and what that means. Because there is a force that is guiding our story.
Yes, most definitely. But we'll touch upon that on a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, John, with Seer, I just want to talk about her appearance, as we talked about Prizefighter's appearance. I got total like 90s X-Men Storm vibes from Seer with the white kind of what would you call it, like a cloak?
She doesn't have a cloak. It's just a white and gold bodysuit.
Yes.
But it definitely feels like it could be, and I say this as very much a layman, and I could be incorrect, but it feels a little African, traditional African in some way, because she's barefoot. But I could be wrong. So I appreciate her design. It felt more like a mix of African traditional plus Wonder Woman plus a little bit of Storm. I definitely think that there's more of a connection to Storm in some ways, but I mean, to compare, I had a hard time with Seer because I feel like we don't get too much into her as a person, but we deal more with her abilities and what those are doing to her. So, I definitely want to see more of the quieter moments with her, just beyond just talking shop with her colleagues, which is something that I feel like, isn't given to us at this point, but later issues are likely going to improve that.
But here's the thing, John, and you just mentioned it, like it's a nice, beautiful little taste because it's making you want more. In our case, the first taste is always free, if you will. And it's just a nice little, I'm glad they didn't give you too much on Seer and another character that I'm about to bring up, because you get to see them in all of their glory in this battle, and you get a little moment where they talk a little bit about, well, where Seer talks a little bit about her powers and such and how it affects her. But it's just enough to go, I want to know more, because her powers sound overpowered as all hell, John.
Yeah, and maybe that's why to use the term, maybe that's why she's effectively nerfed. Just to kind of give her a little bit of more conflict and more of a struggle to get through, rather than just being this all-powerful time goddess.
Yeah, because she is literally, her powers is described as quantum god 1 minute at a time.
Yeah, so that's a little terrifying.
Now, another character, John, that we only got a little taste of, that I sure as heck want to know a lot more of, would be Sawbones, who describes himself as a mercenary medic.
Yeah,
now,
action
what were your
surgeon.
thoughts on Sawbones?
Sawbones, honestly, if I had to give a ranking, he would be dead. He'd be towards the bottom, if not dead last. I mean, what we got with him wasn't necessarily the most interesting to me, because I felt like he fit very much into a Batman Karnak of the Inhumans mold, where he sees the flaws in all things and is prepared to address them. And he just comes off cold, and I think that's in part due to how much we're given. We're given him in action. We're not necessarily given things about him. We're told what he can do, but we don't know much about him outside of how he is related to his colleagues. So I'm hopeful that later issues can delve into him more, and we get more as to why he's so cold and why he's just so direct. I feel like he's there to show, and I go into my review frequently about this expression of, how this comic is wrestling with ideas and the power behind ideas. And I feel like in part Sawbones is there to represent constant learning in some way, because you're always trying to grow and you're always trying to do new things, and that's what I feel like he's doing. But he's not as effective as a prize fighter or a Frontier for me, or a Seer or the others. But I will hold back on further judgment until we get more in the story.
Now, John, I'm glad you brought up Batman in a comparison with Sawbones. Yes. And the reason I'm glad you did so is because as you did, I got a lot of Batman vibes. But the one thing that makes this character more interesting than Batman in the DC universe and his world is always, I'm always 17 steps ahead of anyone at any time, right? I may not have the most powers or any powers at that, but I'm always going to be prepared and 17 steps ahead. So I'm going to know everything about anything. Sawbones isn't like that. Sawbones has a special ability via his technology, not to spoil too much, where he can essentially see enemies' weak points. He can see things like that. And there's one particular panel where he's helping out in a hospital, and he is looking inside and seeing what's wrong with a particular person, and he figures out that this person has a punctured lung and is really, really beaten up and torn up. But he goes over it like a mechanic would go over a car, and not like a doctor. And that's the doctors in the room question him on that, like, well, you can see this, but you're not a doctor, you're using these random terms. And he pretty much flat out says, he's like, yeah, I'm not, it's because I'm not a doctor, I don't know these terms, but I'm trying to learn as I grow. I can tell you what's going on with him. I'm just here in a world that's fighting each other, that's killing each other, and I'm just making sure that this world doesn't go into an all-out war.
Yeah, which is honestly, that's probably the strongest part of the character for me, is that he's just actively trying to prevent chaos.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that he's not perfect as a Batman would be, that he didn't look at an x-ray in this particular panel I was talking about with this person and say, oh yeah, broken femur on the third vertebrae of this and that. Like, no, he's like, yeah, it looks like somebody stabbed him in the lung, and it looks like he got beat up pretty bad on the innards of the innards of this character. Yeah. And, and I love that he's not using medical terms, because he's not a doctor. He's just a guy that has this particular piece of technology, this power, if you will, and he's learning along the way to try to make sure that the world becomes a less chaotic place.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because, I think like a character like Batman wouldn't admit directly that, oh, I'm I just learned this. I made a mistake. I appreciate the fact that Sawbones is acknowledging, yeah, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying and I'm going to get better. Yeah. And speaking of changing things and making things better, let's talk about Originator.
Transition.
Because, I mean, it's in terms of making the world better, she can objectively do that with her powers, at least for 24 hours. So another one of our teammates is a woman named or a hero named Originator. I don't have her real name in front of me. Anthony, do you have that?
It's Sumaria Shamsi.
She's Pakistani, right?
Yes, she is
All
Pakistani. Right. And again, speaking of the diversity of this world, of the their team, their cast of characters, which I appreciate and love. It's not all 17 white dudes and one white one white woman, and they just so happen to be this League of Justice. No, they're a very diverse group of people because the world is a very diverse place in itself. Yeah. So kudos to the co-creators of this book on that.
I agree. Now, Originator's powers allow her to alter reality through the creation of new words, for 24 hours. So she can make up a word and have intent behind it, and then that word will alter all of reality in that specific context for 24 hours. And this is a good example of where the art team comes into play here, because when we see there's a lengthy scene where Originator's out of costume and dealing with a personal friend who wants her to use her powers in a very specific way to benefit the friend. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated the character acting there from artist David Tinto and the rest of the art team, because she's very controlled, very measured. She doesn't use contractions in her words. Because she understands the cost of what's going to happen. Even if it is temporary for 24 hours, changing reality by presenting an idea like that and altering in such a dramatic way can be dangerous.
Yeah. And she's challenged on that because her friend, I like to say quote unquote friend, because if she was a true friend, she wouldn't be being that crappy to her. However, her friend is sitting there saying like, oh, you're so cold, you're so monotone, gosh, don't you actually care about anything or anyone,
my life,
or care about my life? And I love the snapback that she has, putting her in her place, saying I have to think over every word, every intent of every word so methodically, so carefully, because if my tone changes ever so slightly, if I use a contraction, that can totally alter the world and or the universe at this point.
Yeah.
And that just her understanding her own character, her own power situation, and how she responds into this world and the part she plays in this world, being so self-aware like that, A, is so very rare, but B, is made me almost like a hint of sad. I was reading through that particular line and I was proud that she stood up for herself, but I was also sad because it reminded me a lot of Rogue from the X-Men, who couldn't touch anyone, for example, or else they would get their power sucked or their life force sucked away from them. So I got a lot of
comparison.
Yeah, I got a lot of vibes from that, because it must be so difficult for this person to, and it made me think of my own speech. Like, I'm slurring words at times. I talk too fast, even here on this podcast. I use contractions pretty darn much a lot. And again, to no avail, nothing's going to happen in this world. But if she were to use don't instead of do not, what would that actually look like? And I'm interested to see her backstory, if she had an experience like that and what happened to it.
And maybe we'll even see that in future issues. The world may know.
And before we move on from Originator, John, I want to talk about a couple different things. How Originator was used, her exposition was used in that same scene we're talking about. And again, total kudos to Steve Orlando on this, who was the majority writer on it, how he uses her character as a vehicle for exposition to explain a little bit about this world and yet have that emotional connection that I made from via the Rogue comparison I made.
Yes.
The exposition used through her to make us understand that all of these characters aren't in hiding. They're not wearing domino masks and, hiding in a secret fortress of solitude anywhere. They are open and they are who they are. So the exposition used there was amazing. And speaking of Domino masks and characters as another transition, I really love Originator's costume. Again, I made my Booster Gold comparison. Originator's costume made me think a lot of Blue Beetle. I got total Blue Beetle vibes, John.
Oh, really?
Huh. Yeah, Blue Beetle with a cape, man. Like that's essentially it was. If you think about it, it's violet armor, but she has a cloak and a cap, and she has some sort of I would say some strings there. I'm thinking of the splash panel there when she's first introduced using her powers. That kind of looks like Blue Beetle antennas.
Okay, all right. No, I can see that. I'm with it. I'm hip. I'm game with it.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
I'm hip. I am a young man, ladies and gentlemen, and folks at home. Okay, so moving on, we have one more member before we can get into the breadth of what this team is doing. We have our de facto leader, Frontier. How do you feel about Frontier, Anthony?
It's as if Charles Xavier, Tony Stark, and Captain Marvel were kind of smashed all into one character.
Okay, I can see that. Seeing as how she's responsible for forming this team, and she's the tech hero.
Most definitely, and she's a lot like Tony Stark. She holds the responsibility of having to be 1,001 steps ahead or 1,001 thoughts ahead of everyone else.
You know what? Who she reminded me of. And this is going to be an odd comparison, but bear with me, of Michael Keaton's interpretation of Bruce Wayne. And I'm taking this a little bit from Kevin Smith, because I really appreciated that description of it. But Smith always described Keaton's Bruce Wayne as distracted, as, always thinking about something else and not really being in the moment as Bruce Wayne, and is just a little bit off, just because his mind is so preoccupied with everything else he would rather be doing or has to be doing at that moment. And that's what I got from Frontier, is that, like you said, she is 1,001 thoughts away. So much so that she's not even a proper field operative and leaves that to the rest of the team. But, she's dealing with, tracking down the next crisis and what that means, and dealing with the various mysteries that would likely involve that crisis. So that's where the Keaton comparison comes to me. They're both equal amounts of distracted. But she's very, the difference being is that I think she's able to bring it back home to in the moment. She's better in the moment than I think, that version of Bruce Wayne would have been.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's a pretty good comparison and assessment. And I didn't even think about that aspect of it, which is why I'm glad we're both doing this.
I know, right?
Myself. But one thing I want to talk about that, again, going back to the costume design, that I think David Tinto gets credit for is I got a lot of like Metroid Samus vibes. She is wearing, like, when I first saw her in this introductory panel, it's a full panel on her in her full outfit, her full costume, her crime fighting gear, if you will. And I could have sworn if you just give her like an arm blaster, it's like Samus, man. Like it. Yeah. I got super excited. I was like, holy crap, this looks like someone who is going to be a major factor in this world. And that was just from the splash panel I got without knowing anything more about her.
Yeah. And she has some really cool gadgets that show up later. I won't, reveal it now, because I'd rather, people be surprised by it when they read this issue. But she's a brilliant leader. She's a brilliant inventor. I'm also curious to see how much she's holding back from this team.
There's definitely a lot of those kind of vibes. Like she's telling a lot of half truths instead of like a full truth to everybody.
And I'm glad you brought up Charles Xavier, because like that's, everyone tends to, default to the Patrick Stewart gentle father viewpoint of Xavier, which, that's been kind of the existence for majority of that character's life. But the side that most people tend to not be aware of Xavier is the guy likes to lie a lot. and the guy, withholds a lot of information from the students at his school and the X-Men proper. Like even right now in the current incarnation of the X-Men that has led the X-Men to become their own sovereign nation. Well, not just the X-Men, all mutants to become their own sovereign nation, with Xavier leading the charge among others. There's a lot yet to be discovered about his intentions and what he's not telling people, what costs are being exacted that nobody but him knows about. And I'm curious how much of that is bleeding into what Frontier is doing here. So and I think we get a taste of that in whatever happened with Seer in that caused her powers to somewhat malfunction. Everyone else seemed to be unscathed, but is there something nefarious? Is there not something nefarious? That's a good question to have. To transition. Well, through Frontier, we find we get a taste of it at the beginning of the issue, but through Frontier, we find the mystery that's going to carry us through with this team, Anthony. Now, I'd like to give a brief little synopsis before you and I discuss it a little bit more in depth, because honestly, this idea struck me very particularly, in part because I feel that Steve and I are kindred spirits in our appreciation of the works of Grant Morrison. I feel like a lot of this stuff is touching on some of the things that Morrison has done before, but Steve is going to be able to touch on it a lot more broadly than he ever could, or Grant could ever do under DC. And Steve wrote a lot of DC in the last couple of years, but editorial always makes things tricky,
because you have to write in a box, right?
And it's not any fault of the editorial staff. It's they got bosses and requirements that they have to meet too, and it's not their job isn't to stifle; it's to just create the best possible thing within the circumstances. But we're dealing.
Thing.
Yes, Steve, one more thing.
Steve, if you're listening, thank you so much.
We really appreciate it.
Yes.
But what we're dealing with here, Anthony, is ideas, specifically the murder of ideas. We're dealing with, we don't know who's doing this, but we know that somebody has murdered the physical embodiment of an actual idea.
Yeah, which is a total mind F of a concept to sit there and think about. It reminded me almost of like a Minority Report, kind of a feel that I got to it. Whereas you're not just murdering a person and how does that look in this world? You're murdering an actual ideal, and by murdering this ideal or siphoning off this ideal, this emotion, this feeling, whatever have you, that just is a total warp. And so again, coming out in the first issue and giving us this is, holy crap, do I have very high expectations.
Idea side, as it will. It's stuff that I've seen, some writers just kind of come up to the face of and tickle a little bit, but not get into it. I feel like this is going to be a full-on mouth kiss of an attempt to get a grasp on, what happens when we lose an idea or an ideal. What is the cost? What happens if it's taken away? What happens to us on a personal level and on a grander level? And I go into it a lot in my written review, where it's this team itself represents, I think, in some ways, what happens when you mess with ideas and how you address and approach ideas. Originator is one of those, where it's, I think in some of the scenes, it's more about, at least with her, it's about, doing the work to understand the idea and appreciate what it is before just putting it out into the world. Because that's dangerous. If you put out something that you didn't create and engage with on good faith or, good understanding, and you're putting that out into the world, what is that doing to the people who also engage with it? That's perpetuating it. And that's, if it's something bad, then you're perpetuating bad. And how does that bleed out into what we're doing into the world and how we address other people and how they address other people? Fascinating to me, utterly fascinating.
I am so curious on how they're going to, and again, this is a part of the challenge, right? Because not only are you introducing the public to all these particular characters, to all new characters, to this whole, again, to a layman reader of comics like myself, to this whole entire concept of, murdering an emotion or siphoning an emotion or killing a particular thought process, and how that affects, how that actually leads to this multi-universal shift, or narrowing, if you will. I'm trying not to spoil things.
Yes.
And how it's going to either help or harm. And again, are there crisis commanders? Are they actually doing more harm, or are they actually doing more help regarding this particular issue and this particular position that they have to be in?
Yeah, and that's something I think we're going to have to see in later issues, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So I think we should talk about the art team. Just
Oh, absolutely. Let's go.
Just so we have a very well-rounded review here. We are led by penciler David Tinto. Now, I felt that his style was a good mix of traditional superhero with a little bit of a manga influence. Yeah. What did you feel?
I definitely agree with that particular mixture, because the reason I say I definitely agree is, you know what you're talking about, because you are very well fluid in both manga and comic book lore. But because of a lot of the art styles, particularly when you had your close-ups of characters, remind me a lot of like My Hero Academia, and remind me a lot of if Justice League's art styles, especially of the mid-2000s I'm thinking of, were to be warped ever so slightly, kind of influenced on that Japanese manga styles with the brush strokes, the way they are, the way that they cartoon and pencil some of the hair flowing, definitely gave me a lot of that manga vibe, John. But one of the things I really want to mention as far as the art team goes is the most definite and beautiful use of the tone, how they use the colors, and really kind of, again, one of my notes is that they darken the tone. It helps set the tone where it's all kind of just, I lost my thought. I lost my word, but it's all.
I think I know where you're going, because I went along with this too. The way the colors work in regard with the acting that Tinto is doing, it really helps sell the tone and the mood of the scene that it's in, right? So
yes, exactly.
You open up with a very noirish type of scene with a murder mystery, and then when you get to the more superhero stuff, it's bold, it's bright, it's in your face, but it's clear.
It's that, John, but it's also, and again, this just speaks of the genius of it, it's also bright and bold, but it's slightly muted.
Yeah.
Like if you notice a lot of the colors, and hopefully it's not just the platform I was reading this comic on and my computer screen being dull, but it just seemed like a lot of the blues were just a muted, ever so slightly muted blue, showing that like yes, we're bright and beautiful and bold characters, but there's also a hint of despair here.
Mm-hmm. That something is missing, but it's not exactly clear what that is. Yeah, and we're talking about the colors without mentioning the colorist, who is a very talented young woman named Francesca Carotentuo, who does honestly great works. The mood that is set by the colors in each scene, honestly, are really, really well done, and it jumps between various styles, from noir to very clear-cut superhero stuff to very warm dialogue scenes. To mixtures of all of those.
Yes.
So it's honestly great work. And to bring it back to David's work, I really appreciated his character acting. Because there are moments where the expression on certain characters. I'm thinking particularly of a dialogue scene with Originator, where he really captures her feelings in those moments. And, as cold and monotone as, some people might see her, she is anything but, and you can see it all in her face, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. And again, just this art team. And again, I wish I had the wherewithal to give particular kudos to where this person starts and where this person stops. But I'm learning as I go along, just like with everything else. But again, just the attention to detail, John, that you mentioned. One of the opening scenes is in front of what appears to be like the U.S. Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives, if you will. And just the tone that's set of how things are shaded. Like there's an American flag draped in the background. And again, this isn't going to spoil anything at all, but there's an American flag draped in the background of whoever is speaking in the House or the Senate, wherever this is. And if you notice the American flag, it's, again, I mentioned the use of mute, right? It's very muted. It's not a bright, shining American flag that you always see waving and wandering. It's very mute, and which fits the tone perfectly of what they're discussing in this particular session of Congress and what's going on in the United States of America at this point in this world.
I couldn't have said it better myself, my friend.
So well, you could have, because I think I just rambled and stumbled and a lot of ums and uhs later.
No. You made a very good point. Don't sell yourself short. I think with that being said, we can bring this on home, Anthony. Final thoughts for Commanders in Crisis #1.
Oh, God. Final thoughts for me, John, is just if I had to sum it down to literally one word, it's just wonderment, if that's an actual word.
I think so.
If it's not, Ludic Lounge just created it.
Or the originator made it up for you.
There you go. So, wonderment. And the reason I'm using that word and going to play off of that word is because, again, wonderment from the aspect of, wow, they're really setting on this venture of all new characters. So having to have the trouble of creating this into all these characters with all of these deep backgrounds and all of these deep and diverse backgrounds and what they're bringing to the story. But now they're throwing on top of that the added challenge of a multiverse and an added challenge of, okay, so what does an enemy or an antagonist, if you will, look like in this kind of a world, dealing with the multiverse, dealing with all of the story beats that are happening in just a single issue alone. And again, a lot of people would have failed at this. I know a lot of writers and creators out there would have failed at this idea, but just to have the forethought of how to set up this world, how to create this world with the beautiful use of exposition that they use to describe the world, to describe what's going on in the world, to describe what's been happening in this said multiverse, and using that exposition via the vehicles of the actual characters themselves, the superheroes themselves, while still, again, because it didn't have enough challenge, John, while still putting it in addition to trying to describe who these characters are and where their character development could be. So it's just wonderment to me. And I am so looking forward to this issue fully dropping and all of the other issues coming out. And I would, if Steve and the other creators of this world would have us, I would love to just do a book-by-book breakdown on all of this and where it goes.
Very well said, Anthony. Thank you. As for myself, I am in agreement with a lot of what Anthony said. For me, this felt like the culmination of a world where we are so used to superheroes and what they go through. For me, having to go through, having read, and experienced a lot of the stuff that I feel like this book is referencing, it felt like the ultimate toy box in some ways. Like, and I say this sitting under, a mountain of action figures where it's just DC and Marvel and everything in between, just all working together towards one big, goal. That's what I appreciated most about Commanders in Crisis, is that it felt like, we're putting all the toys in the toy box and we're saying we're going to do whatever we want with them. And we're going to deal with it with big ideas, and we're going to deal with big emotion, and we're going to do it with, fun and style, but, and it'll get heavy, but it'll still find a good balancing point, which honestly reminded me of all the best DC stuff that I loved, as I was developing as a big comic book reader. I think the art is astounding. I think it is, an easily digestible, method. I think this is a book that you can give to somebody who hasn't read comic books before, who's dealt with just the movie side. It's you can give this to a manga reader, and I think you'd automatically get their attention because it's unique enough to stand apart from its superhero, forefathers. But you greatly appreciate it even more the more familiar you are with, the big DC stuff and the big Marvel stuff. I have followed Steve's career, going back to his Image original graphic novel Virgil, with his artist JD Faith among the rest of the team, and I really appreciated Steve's adaptability. He can go from noir to mystery to big superhero stuff from his the stuff that he did at DC. So I have full faith that he's going to bring this story to a very satisfying journey, and I can't wait to see what comes next. So if our loyal listeners are so inclined, you can check out my written review on the Ludic Lounge website, which will be linked in the episode description. In that review, we have an order form that you will take to your local comic book shop. I believe this episode might be dropping a little bit close to that deadline of September 21st, but get to your comic shop by September 21st. Put in an order for this comic. Let's make this a phenomenon. And Anthony, I hope we'll be able to review issue 2.
I hope so too, John. And I hope that this reaches the ears that it reaches. And just one more thing before we close out on our talk of Commanders in Crisis, which I wanted to bring up before you so eloquently closed it off. But, John, I wanted to just talk about how diverse this cast is, how diverse these characters are. And I know I already touched upon this, but it's even through little things that I appreciated that you wouldn't think of, like Steve's use of Latinx or Latinx instead of Latino or Latina. That's something that didn't have to do, right? That's not something, but it's a choice that was made to show how conscientious this team is being and how open and creative and how much they care about putting in people of color and people of other socioeconomic status into this world. And I want to applaud that. And I wish I would have said that in the beginning half before we so eloquently closed it, but I appreciate that. I love that. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more of that inclusion in the future of Commanders in Crisis, John.
I think that's a better way to end it myself personally. But on that note, we can move on to our regularly scheduled programming, which is more of our usual horse shit.
Now, for those of you who are new to Ludic Lounge and Ludic Loungecast, if this is the part you're tuning out, we want to say thank you. We want to say that if you like what we're doing here, we have a plethora of episodes of Loungecast, amongst other things that we are doing for the Ludic Lounge. And you can, again, follow us at Ludic Lounge on Twitter, and we'll have our tags at the end of the episode in these episode notes. So please follow us. Please like. Please subscribe. Please let us know what you like about it. Please let us know what you hate about it. The one thing we don't like is apathy. Let us know what we're doing. Yeah, let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know how we can serve you guys, the public, our loyal Ludiac Loungers, as I so lovingly like to refer to you all as. Let us know.
We like words and critiques. That's just us.
That's just us.
But how you been, buddy?
Oh, I've been good, man. Like, I loved reading this comic. It started really giving me that itch to really go back into comics again.
Yeah.
Because as you know, John, like, I've been hot and cold on and off. Typically, I only read like one book and like a completed section of comics, like New Frontier or Batman Year One or Dark Knight Returns. And that's typically my exposure to comics.
Yeah.
It's kind of brought back a little bit of that itch, though. So I was really glad to really feel that again, to see like the wonderment, as I so eloquently put a little bit ago, what that looks like, what the media of comic books can actually enlighten in life.
No, I agree. You know, and I think you touch upon the thing that gets in the way of my fiance actually reading a lot more. Is it's just like it's so difficult where to pick up and start.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you get certain things that are easier to do that. You know, like all the ones that you mentioned are great examples of that because they're just, you know, they have a beginning and somewhat of an end enough that you can feel like you were contented at the end of that particular story. But you know, to go on from that, it gets trickier because then you're dealing with, you know, probably what 20 years to
Yeah.
20 plus years of, you know, continuity and for trying to figure out where the hell you were or in relation to where the character is now, and that can get complicated and frustrating. And I totally get it. I try to make it for, you know, people who come to me with, you know, asking, you know, where do I go for comics if I want, you know, X, Y, and Z, like, or if they want to follow a particular character after seeing a movie or a TV show. You know, I try to make it as easy as I can to kind of spark off that interest. But it's tricky. It's very tricky.
Yeah. They don't make it that easy. And by they, I mean the corporate side of comic books. And again, because at the end of the day, it is a business.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and I totally get it. But it's really hard when you're reading a comic. And again, I'm thinking of myself buying comics back in the day, and I would just buy like Spider-Man, you know, edition 500 or whatever like that, whatever have you. And again, I'd want to know where that story continues, where that story goes back on. And it was nice ever so often you see, you know, after a dialogue bubble, they'd have like see issue 199,
Yeah.
which is fine, which is nice, but it's also I miss the Stan Lee approach of every comic is someone's first comic.
Yeah.
Um,
And some people do, sometimes some series still kind of maintain that, but it's just the way it's digested now, and the way the audience is so fractured. It's tricky to even do that anymore because now it becomes, well, most readers would say, oh, it's a chore to go back to see Spider-Man 191, even though, you know, say whatever issue you're reading is still essentially standalone, you know, and 191 adds an additional detail. It's tricky to get somebody interested enough to go back, you know?
yeah. And then those people who are interested enough to go back, especially with, unfortunately, like the comics shrinking kind of the way they've been due to COVID and due to other factors, well, the print media in general, it's out of circulation now. Yeah. Now 191 has been out of circulation for the past 20 years. And so it's, you know, where am I going to find this to if I actually am wanting to go back, if you will?
Well, it helps that a lot of the older stuff is getting digitized.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that.
It's like I think the best resources if you're, you know, a superhero fan and looking to get more into the older stuff. Marvel Unlimited is great for this because they have, you know, 20 plus thousand you know, comics ranging from the entirety of Marvel's publishing history on hand, you know, for a monthly fee. And you can read as much as you want. The DC Universe app is aiming to do the same thing, but with Warner Brothers restructuring, we don't know what that app is necessarily going to look like if it exists. Hopefully, it still does, but it's still kind of up in the air. So, kind of I would advise people if you're looking to get into the DC stuff, maybe just stick to, you know, collected books for right now until the DC Universe thing settles, or just subscribe to DC Universe and test it out for yourself and show Warner Brothers and DC like that's a product you want. You know, the businesses follow where the money goes. That's
pretty much
that's the truth of it.
But this kind of reiterates why I was so glad to get this review copy. And again, I'm not just trying to kiss ass here. I'm really not. But to be able to get in on the ground floor of something, to be able to get into like literally edition 1 of a new world, a new realm, if you will. And again, for me personally, I'm not speaking as a whole, but for me personally, it's such a rare thing for me to find that and to be able to find that I am just so thankful. And again, now I know it's like, okay, this is episode or issue 1. Now I know that I just have to search Commanders in Crisis issue 2 and 3 and 4. And I already know what's going on instead of having to do a run around of 20 years of comic books history.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a good point to be made, my friend.
So how have you been, buddy?
I've been all right. I've been playing a couple things, been reading a lot of things. I'm finally in the Batman phase of my giant Grant Morrison DC reread.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, fuck. And we haven't had a chance to talk about the trailer for the Batman.
No, we haven't actually. Now that I think about it,
we haven't had a chance to talk about a couple things. I mean, like, do you want to talk about that trailer?
sure, why not, man? Let's do it.
How much did that trailer fucking rock?
It rocked hard, man.
It rocked
It
hard.
gave me so many vibes of a mixture of Batman Year One with Dark Knight Returns, which are two of my favorite Batman vehicles to begin with. But Dark Knight Returns, by that I mean like where he's literally crunching the bones of that big broad guy where he's like, I'm a surgeon and this is my field and this is my
the brutality of it.
Yeah, the brutality of that one particular moment in that trailer where he's just beating down that guy who is that was amazing. And again, I think Robert Pattinson has gotten a raw deal over the years. I think everyone just sits there and goes, oh yeah, that's the Twilight guy that sparkled. Well, yes, technically you're correct in that, but he has done so much after the fact to kind of bolster up his bona fides, if you will, that I think a lot of people aren't giving him enough credit. Again, one movie that looked fantastic that I still have yet to see and want to see is the one that came out, I think last year or this year, where it's with William Dafoe and it's
the Lighthouse.
Yeah, The Lighthouse, exactly.
I haven't seen it myself. I hear it is absolutely mental, in a good way. But I'm with you. I think he got the rawest of deals, and that's just the nature of a male-dominated fandom that comics can be sometimes, where they will shit on things that tend to be female-centric, and Twilight was definitely that. I was guilty of it way back when. I'll admit it, and it was the wrong thing of me to do. Even back then, because it's just anything that gets fans into the door. By my standards now, it's like great, good. If it let them deal with whatever the quality is. It doesn't necessarily have to be for me. If it gets them into the door and getting to talk about genre stuff, like horror or sci-fi or fantasy or whatever have you. I say by all means. And if it requires a good-looking British guy with floppy hair, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah. One thing about the trailer that I'm curious about is what kind of Bruce Wayne is he going to be? Because I kind of got the vibes, and a lot of the toxicity of the internet and Twitter world and everything is calling him Emo Bruce. I don't know if you heard that one floating around.
Yeah, and I'm here for it because Bruce would be at this point in his career, because the movie is supposed to be the second year.
Yeah, it's supposed to be year 2. So
yeah, year 2. So it is supposed to be like a 26-year-old Bruce Wayne, because if we follow the year 1 line, he's 25 when he starts as Batman. And with that, I would say it's in line with somebody who is not emotionally been able to grow because he's stuck within his trauma. So it makes sense to me that at this point, this Bruce would be a little bit more kind of sullen and grumpy and emotional. But it's hard to gauge what this movie is going to do with it, because we're only given like a 2-minute trailer. But based on what we've seen, he's a little bit longer hair, he's a lot more kind of withdrawn. We're definitely not going to see Playboy Bruce.
No.
And if we do, I don't think it'll be in the exact form that we would expect it, because I think every single person who's played Bruce Wayne has done the Playboy thing differently.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, like, I think the ones that interest me most tend to be are where it's a little bit more practical in relation to his aspect as Batman. Because I feel like Adam West, his Batman and his Bruce Wayne are very much the same. So what he does as Bruce is meant to kind of make easier his efforts as Batman. So he's a philanthropist. He's actively donating to stuff. He's actively participating in the world, and doing things that make it easier for the citizens of Gotham.
Not only because, again, a lot of people think Adam West Batman and they think, okay, it was the groovy time and Batman was a goof. I think a lot of people don't give enough credit to Adam West. And again, this is to the old man audience of us that we are. And the scene I'm thinking in particular, I guess it was the pilot episode, you could technically call it, where he's sitting there like by his mantle explaining why he's giving to a specific charity, or giving to, I think it was the Gotham Police Fund or something that he's giving to that.
Like that.
And he's going into why he's doing what he's doing, as Bruce Wayne, not as Batman, right? He's as Bruce Wayne, and he's talking about how his parents were brutally murdered in front of his eyes. And you could just see the stoic face that he's given, that there's still emotion there. And it's credit to Adam West, man.
Yeah.
That he's stoic and he's just given the matter of facts, but there's so much emotion behind that a lot of people just think, oh yeah, he was just goofy and he was just, running around with Robin the Boy Wonder and Aunt Harriet and all of that.
Yeah.
But no, man, like it was an actual serious portrayal of Bruce Wayne.
No, I agree. And I think like somebody like Keaton is more, that's where Bruce is definitely a mask and Batman is the reality for him, where it's just like, but he still does, he still does charity things. He still does donations things, but it's not an active thing he's concerned about. He's more concerned about being out there and doing
He's more
things.
behind the scenes, Bruce.
Yes, exactly.
He's not out in the open, out in the front, Bruce. He's behind the scenes, and he's just got to sign a check and ship it off to wherever. He's not let me give you my Bat credit card.
No, yeah. And arguably, I would think that like what Clooney does is what people think Adam West does.
Yes.
Even though I think Clooney's Bruce Wayne is the stronger part of his performance.
Yes.
Because and in that movie you have that emotional through line of what he's dealing with Alfred.
Right.
But like Kilmer, I can't even think of anything about him, to be honest. And that's
it was just vanilla. You know what I mean?
I think so, yeah. And I think like any value comes out of his Bruce is that psychological discussion of what it means to be Batman, but it's also premised on the fact that it seems like he forgot he's doing this because his parents were murdered in front of him.
Yeah.
Which is weird. So it's like I'm here for the discussion of it, but it's just my recollection is that it doesn't necessarily track because he seems to have forgotten the thing that motivated him the most, which I don't know how that's even freaking possible. And Bale is just, it leans into the cover story,
Yeah.
where it is Bruce. He does Bruce the Playboy, I think, the best.
I think he does too, man. Like I'm just picturing Batman Begins where like he's doing the whole flaunting and he swims with the supermodel into I own this building now, that scene.
Yeah.
Like he did that the best. But then when he had to be serious Bruce Wayne, like when he let people behind that mask of Bruce Wayne, when he actually let people behind that, like he was serious. He was really intense. He did it really well.
Yeah, I appreciated Bale's able to differentiate between those two aspects of Bruce and slip behind them so easily. And Kevin Conroy is also able to do that exceedingly well. That's why he's been
Kevin
Batman.
Conroy is the man regardless. So.
Yeah, and even though I get why Conroy and he hasn't had his best moments either, and that's why I imagine sometimes they don't choose him for certain projects because it just he probably wouldn't fit. But I think when you go to the peak of what Conroy could do with his Batman, I'm thinking like something like Mask of the Phantasm. It's very much he's able to access that emotional core.
Oh yeah.
And
he didn't have to have a voice modulator to be Bruce Wayne and Batman. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he arguably perfected what Keaton was trying to do with his voice, and what I think Pattinson is also doing as well. Where he's able to make a difference between who is who. Because like with Keaton, it's a very soft but firm whisper. And when he's Bruce Wayne, it's very much not that. But Yeah, and I can't really say much on Pattinson because we only have that one trailer, and unfortunately, he is down with COVID, which hopefully leads to a very speedy and effective recovery, because nobody wants to deal with this shit.
No, I mean, poor guy. Like, that's nothing to.
Yeah, nobody should
wish on your worst enemies, man.
No, and it opens up a larger conversation about the worth of entertainment versus safety, and what we're putting on casts and crews to just keep developing stuff.
Speaking of crews, like what Tom Cruise is doing, he's buying a fucking giant yacht and boat, and he's making that a bubble or safe zone or whatever he's calling it. Like, dude, you're almost like 70 years old at this point.
No, he's in his 50s, actually.
Okay, you're almost 60 years old at this point. Like, are you really need to make that many more Mission Impossibles where you're going to buy a fucking boat and do this and film it like that? Just, why don't you take a break? Why don't you sit down and read a book? Why don't you pick up the first issue of Commanders and
Exactly.
I couldn't even finish my thought. Why don't you do that, Tom Cruise? All right.
Fucking Tom Cruise. Anyway, Batman.
I'm so glad he knew he was never Batman. Like, remember when that was like a rumor going around? I think.
Remember he was almost Iron Man.
Yeah.
And there was a longest time where he Cruise was like rumored to be Hal Jordan in whatever Green Lantern movie is supposed to be coming.
I mean, I think that could have worked if you just think of him in Top Gun, right?
Yeah.
Which is essentially him playing Hal. Like, I could have probably seen it. I wouldn't have wanted it, but I could have seen it.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to things like that where you're just fan casting, you honestly need to see actual footage of something going down, because I think everybody would have been, and I think what happened to Pattinson is also what happened to Heath Ledger and what also happened to Keaton way back when, where it's just like you can't judge what their performance is going to be until you see the fucking performance.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that Ledger won the Academy Award for that performance is proof positive that you need to see the performance. And what
but that's fucking Hollywood. That's the bullshit where they're not going to get. If he was still alive, he wouldn't have gotten that. He would have been passed on that. It's just because he was dead and the fucking Academy is sitting there like, oh, we should probably throw him a bone because he's dead now. Like, I hate that they do that shit every year. Like, give it to the person who deserves it, and actually bring in media now that you're not going to snub your nose at. Like, we've had like literally at this point 20 years of comic book films, and look how great at the highs of highs that they've been. Again, we've had shitty ones, don't get me wrong, but at the highs of the highs, they deserve not just like a bone of, oh yeah, special effects, here you go. Like, actual consideration for actors and actresses and supporting cast in those particular films.
Yeah, we almost got it with Black Panther, and I think a lot of those performances deserved their own recognition.
Absolutely.
Like, I think, and I'm not just saying this because Boseman has passed. I think what he does with T'Challa in Black Panther is worthy of a nomination. But that, I think, even if he did get nominated, I think what Michael B. Jordan does as Killmonger is what elevates that movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
On top of he is literally giving every single fiber of his being into that performance, and what he was given also deserves that amount of recognition. And the fact that the Academy is filled with snooty old farts who don't see the value in this type of entertainment. We want that's just part of the problem, because I think
of course that's different than what we are, because we are snooty old farts that are not in the mainstream, but we give credit where it's due. Damn it.
Exactly. Pen to the face. We're gonna poke you in the eye with it, and then give you a tender hug and say we're sorry, but you need to.
Sounds like my Friday night, but however, moving forward, John.
Yes.
You tickled a little thought that I had when we were talking about fan casting.
Yeah.
What was your favorite? Because we did this many a time. Many nights were spent doing fan casting. What was your favorite fan casting that either came to fruition or did not come to fruition that you wish would have happened, or wish will happen, if you will?
Oh, damn. Like the one fan cast that I would like to see more than anything.
Yeah. Like one that we've either discussed on this platform or off air.
Oh, jeez. I mean,
okay, I'll give you mine because I had the wherewithal to actually go through this as you were talking, and you mentioned it, and I had the time to think about it. John Hamm as Kingdom Come Superman.
Fuck yeah, damn. Yeah, that's honestly a fucking strong one. I mean, like the thing about him is that I feel like he fits either Bruce or Clark at certain points. He could fit either of them. One of the comic artists I've met a couple times, and I'm a great admirer of his work, Mitch Garrett's. He draws Batman as a peak physical condition 50-year-old, and it's basically John Hamm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like he tells people, you can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
Like how else would a grown-ass man have 4 different young adults be Robin? Or 5 different young adults. It's just like, he's going to be a little bit older, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no shit.
That's the reality of it. Fan casting. I'm thinking. Because honestly, I think like I just want like a wholesome ass fucking Superman, and John Hamm just fucking fits it. Like even it, like I would want it beyond just Kingdom Come, you know? And it's just like no disrespect to Henry Cavill, but it's just like damn, man. Like I just want that fucking Superman earnestness that like the Batman is getting, you know?
Yeah.
Because like to bring it back to the Batman, like what Matt Reeves is doing is like he's putting in the same effort that he did on those Planet of the Apes movies, you know? And those are
your damn hands off me, you damn dirty apes.
Hello. I'm Charlton Heston, auditioning for the role of the Joker. Hello, Batman. Take your filthy paws off me, you damn dirty bat.
Oh, you beautiful bastard, you.
I just pulled that out of my ass. I'm trying to think. Yeah, you know, one fan cast that I would have liked to have seen if they had been able to do it.
I'm sorry, I'm still reeling.
Do you need a minute?
I might. Like, you transitioned so beautifully. I'm sitting there like, how could you transition off of that? Now I want to hear, like, Pacino as Riddler.
Oh.
Yes, give it to me.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting up on that mic, yeah. Al Pacino as the Riddler. Come on now. Oh, riddle me this, Batman, yeah. What does a man do when he's a liar, but he's dead? He lies still. Come on now. Whoa, yeah. Fucked up that riddle. But I went with it. Yeah. Come on now.
It's because that riddle's got a great ass.
He's got a great ass. And I put my hand in front of my camera because I forgot him on film.
I feel so bad for Hank Azaria in that scene from Heat where Al Pacino is just going into full Pacino mode, and poor Hank Azaria sitting there like, dude, just stop.
But you know, in like the back of his mind, it's like, I'm opposite Al Pacino. I'm enjoying this. I'm opposite Al Pacino. I'm enjoying this. I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah, right? At some point, you're just like, Jesus, man, easy.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's all my Pacino is just him in Heat in that moment all the time.
Oh, and for those of you who are still with us, who just joined us for the particular Crisis review that we did, this is pretty much what makes up the Ludic Loungecast. Is John and I just do shit to make each other laugh. Essentially, I tee John off to do shit to make me laugh,
and vice versa. And you know, we go on a lot of tangents. Eventually, we'll land the damn plane and go back to whatever the hell we were talking about and move on to the next flight. But that's usually how we roll. But to go back to the Riddler as Batman, did you notice the Riddler in that trailer?
No.
He was the guy doing that duct taping stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's him. Yeah, it's Paul Dano.
Oh. What else is he in? Paul Dano.
Have you seen There Will Be Blood?
a while ago, but
he's the preacher that ends up
oh,
being.
I drink your milkshake.
Yep.
I drink it up.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. I can't do. Yeah. What's his? What's his?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Thank you. There we go. Daniel Day-Lewis. Fuck. Why do you have to retire?
Because, dude, look at his body of work. Like, what else did he need to achieve?
I mean, fair. That is fair. That is very fair. Paul Dano's also in Looper. He plays.
God, I forgot about that movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie. I watched it.
Movie. I just forgot about it.
Yeah. I mean, there was once upon a time we were probably going to get a Batman movie starring JGL. I mean, he is Robin.
I am so ashamed of my former self for cheering so hard at that stupid throwaway line that's given in that third Batman movie, where it's like, but you can, all my friends call me Robin, and cheer. I just remember cheering so hard, like a dummy going through puberty young boy.
I was like 17 probably. We might need to do like a revisit series on the Nolan stuff just to see where it stands with us.
I think I want to, because I mean, Dark Knight I feel like would still hold up, but it's also a very lengthy movie. It's a lot longer than you think it is.
Yeah, it has 3 different endings.
Yeah, which is John's model for life. Loyal Ludiacs is that it's a lot bigger, longer than you think it actually is.
Hey-oh! I'm Ed McMahon.
You know what? Don't take Ed McMahon away from me. That's like the one impression I do. All right, is drunken Ed McMahon having a stroke on the set of Carson.
Okay, I will let you keep your Ed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with the Batman. I mean, that trailer is incredibly stylized and very, very cool. But it affirmed the fact that I'm very excited for that movie, and I hope.
Oh yeah.
It is able to film again soon.
At this point, I'm hoping any movie can film at any point in time, because I don't know what Hollywood's going to physically look like at this point.
Yeah, everything is pivoting, I think, towards animation in some regard, because it's easier to do that in the situation, at least that the U.S. finds itself in. So it's a matter of where people are going to film. I think that's going to be changed.
Yeah,
what people are regularly consuming, because I don't necessarily think it's going to be live action shows as much anymore. It might be a lot more animated stuff, and the live action stuff we do get is going to be very a lot more one-on-one stuff, less populated scenes, I would think.
Yeah, it's gotta be, man.
So I think it's going to be an interesting experiment too, looking at movies that started filming before and then had to finish during, versus those that have to start during, and then those that were finished right before all of this went down.
Right.
So I think it'll be an interesting little thing to see what happens.
So what you're telling me, John, is that since things are going to be more animated, you're saying that there's a chance for my Booster Gold Blue Beetle buddy cop show on the DC network, whatever that's called, and make it animated and like R-rated like that Harley Quinn show.
That is certainly possible.
God, I hope so.
It might be on HBO Max for all we know.
God, I hope so. I don't care where it's at. I would buy whatever streaming service just to watch that show.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the DC stuff, because like coming out of because DC is doing the DC Fandom, which is their online event due to no physical convention. So they have split all of their DC news across like 2 different weekends and 2 different months. So like the first Fandom released this trailer for the Batman and for Wonder Woman 1984, which
is
supposedly
it called Fandom or Fando?
Fandom. So it's like Fandom.
So like Thunderdome.
Yeah, it's the DC Thunderdome basically.
Oh, I like that so much better. Why didn't they lead with that? They can have like Tina Turner just like, we don't need any more heroes.
In this event all about heroes?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Just to totally make no fucking sense, but be like, that's a Thunderdome reference.
I mean, the Warner Brothers does own Mad Max to some extent, I think, so it could work.
Speaking of franchise, they're probably not gonna do any fucking thing with anymore.
No, they're working on it. They're working on something. They're doing a Fury. Yeah, no, there was actually some news about it a couple months ago. I mean, I don't know what it's like now because of COVID, but they were talking about a Furiosa prequel. With
I can see
Killing
that.
Eve star Jodie Comer. Yeah, so it would be a younger Furiosa, no Charlize.
Which is, yeah, okay. Now I'm starting to remember this story because there was a lot
Yeah.
of controversy of people in the fandom being like, "What do you mean no Charlize Theron? She's fucking perfect." Blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I think even Charlize Theron commented as much, but the story I think is just purely prequel, so it's supposed to just be what happens to lead her up to where we meet her in Fury Road. But I think there's also talks of doing something that is set after Fury Road with
God
more
damn it.
Furiosa, but I don't know.
Whoa, Fury Road. God, I just as soon as you said Fury Road, I just instantly heard Springsteen singing Fury Road to the tune of Thunder Road, and I
The boss just embodied you.
That's why I said damn it on up loud and just ruined your beautifully done segment because it's just the boss came out and was just oh Fury Road, Furiosa in Fury Road. That's my god awful boss impression. How'd you like it?
7 out of 10.
That's very generous. I appreciate that.
I mean, I'm here to just be generous, and
I would have given it like a solid 4, right?
Your ego is fragile enough. I don't want to mess with that.
Fair enough.
I mean, I've known you this long enough to know the difference. Well, the reason I bring up the fandom stuff is that they're leaning into the whole. We have a multiverse, so all of our movies are essentially canon to each other.
Okay.
That's how we're gonna get in this whatever this Flash movie turns out to be. We're gonna get Ben Affleck opposite Michael Keaton, both as Batman. I mean, that's what it's one way to get Linda Carter, I guess, back as Wonder Woman at some point. I don't know.
I mean, in theory, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
But given the track record of DC Cinematic Universe,
I mean, yeah, I don't know. The name Extended Universe makes more sense now because now they're just dealing with the fact that everybody's kind of all in their own corners. But I mean, I agree. Their track record in the last couple of years makes it a little bit untrustworthy to some extent. I mean, like Wonder Woman and Shazam, or like and take what you will, Aquaman, or the few exceptions. But I mean, it gets the Snyderites to shut up because now they have their own specific corner that they can go fuck off to.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, I know. It's all fucking weird. But you know, if it leads me to get a fucking genuine ass Superman movie at some fucking point, I'm okay with it. I just want that again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you there. I really don't.
And this kind of that feeling translates into my next topic, which is something I've been playing that just came out not too long ago.
Transition.
I'm Carl Sagan, and this was a transition.
I don't understand how you always go to Carl Sagan for transition.
Because it sounds fun when I do it as Carl Sagan.
But then it turns to Kermit the Frog.
This is Carl Sagan, scientist extraordinaire, and this is Kermit the Frog. Hello. Hi-ho.
Hey-ho, transition here.
Transition here. Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog. I'm here to transition on YouTube. Hello. Hi-ho.
Oh yeah, I forgot people are going to be... Damn. That threw me through a loop. I was just saying I forgot that people are going to be watching this on YouTube. I hope I haven't been doing anything vulgar.
No. Or have you? Have you though? Have you? I mean, your Hawaiian shirt is open to your navel. Any lower, it's just going to bypass your balls.
I mean, that's fair. I didn't realize it was really this low. I really didn't.
It's okay. I'm here for it.
I'm just letting my beautiful ginger chest hair just go flowing.
There you go. It'll make all the lady and men folk a Twitter.
And speaking of a Twitter, you can follow us at... I'm just kidding.
No, one of our celebrity guests will tell us at the end.
I was thinking about doing like a serious one since the first half of this is serious. So I'm like, nah, I'm probably just going to add like do your Schwarzenegger again or your Pacino probably.
Oh, yeah. I got to do the outro.
Yeah, now I got to do with the Pacino one since you already did your Pacino impression earlier.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I got in.
It was
like
so fun. So I'm editing the Ludic Lives episode podcast that I just recorded recently with our friend of the show, Robin. So look forward to that dropping soon, folks.
Hey.
And I'm like, I was looking at that through all my various outros that you so beautifully gave us, and I'm like, I can't put any of these at the end. I'm like,
nor should you.
No. I was like, no, because this is a good conversation that we had. And I was like, I can't just have like Schwarzenegger bust in at the end of this.
With a hello, this was Ludic Lives.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, no.
Thank you for bearing your soul with us.
Yeah, so essentially I was like, okay, let me do my own personal recording, some vanilla, just like, hey, thanks for joining us, folks.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. Anyway, thank you for all that background, Anthony. I'm looking forward to that episode too.
It was a great conversation. It was a lot of fun. It got, like I said, we touched a broad brush stroke of topics and issues, and I think it went really, really well. And I hope a lot of people listen to it. I hope a lot of people, learn some things, because I definitely learned some things.
Speaking of learning things.
Yes, John.
Transition. I've been playing Marvel's The Avengers.
So before you jump into how you have been liking it and enjoying it, has been a lot of controversy I've been seeing about Marvel's Avengers.
Really?
And the controversy, I follow a couple of people on Twitter who are saying that it feels like an incomplete game, or that it feels polished in some areas, but other areas it feels completely like a copied and paste. Parts were just copy and paste and thrown into it. So I was very eager to hear your thoughts on it, to see, because obviously you're the only Twitter handle I trust as far as video games and comic things related, at just _John_0891.
Thank you for that plug. Well, learning that, because that's the first I've heard of it, and I honestly was kind of coming to a little bit similar mindset. I guess I can start with the positive first. The reason I mentioned it in relation to having like pure expressions of certain characters, like, having a proper good Superman movie. I feel like what this game does on a character level for each of these, I think, from a character perspective, and I mean that by, how these characters play. I think you could take each single character and put them with this fighting engine into their own game, and if you develop a story around that, I think you have a full-fledged game.
Okay.
Because each of them feel distinct enough from each other that it feels different every time you're somebody else. Story-wise and content-wise, I definitely feel like this game is following Destiny. In that I mean the first Destiny game.
Okay.
And my experience with the first Destiny was very much along the lines of what you were saying other people are commenting on, that it didn't feel necessarily complete. It felt rushed. There was a lot of repetition. And in some regard with the Avengers right now, yeah, it's certain maps and mission objectives you have to do the same style of things.
Okay.
Like King of the Hill stuff, or destroy 4 of a generator parts or whatever. And from what I understand, if you barrel through the main campaign, it's about 8 hours.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But that's not like including stuff, like exploring other worlds, because every day there's new missions and new things to do, but they are a little bit repetitive. And I think part of it is also I don't know how much COVID impacted production on this. It definitely feels better than my experiences with the beta version not too long, last month.
Right.
They definitely learned a lot of lessons, and it doesn't feel as choppy or as like frustrating as it did in the beta. I am a little bit frustrated here and there, because it does feel like like there are certain parts where it feels abnormally tough, and it definitely leans into the grinding aspect of some games, which is not necessarily the thing I appreciate the most. but I think I'm here more for the story, less for the multiplayer experience. So
you're there for 8 hours of a game.
I mean, I'm there for 8 hours of a game, but I'm also aware of the fact that they are very actively adding a lot more things to this game.
That's fair. That's definitely fair.
And looking, doing my own research, I was looking into what the DLC plans are, and they're saying, we're adding a whole additional story on top of the base model, which is, AIM and MODOK.
So base.
Avengers.
Avengers creating more content to play.
Content.
Who in our audience do you think would actually understand that reference we just made to that song?
Maybe like a hand. I can probably count on one hand.
I could probably count on like one finger.
Yeah. So Avengers. Yeah, I'm enjoying the game so far. Outside of the frustrations I have, certain things. I remember something I talked to you about before when the beta dropped. It felt like it's trying to be the ultimate version of what Marvel Ultimate Alliance was.
Yeah.
I do wish that you had the characters, swap at any time. Because once you pick a character, you're locked until you can get to the mission select section, and that's what's frustrating. That's one of the things that's frustrating me. The other is that nobody is leveling at the same time. So like I just got to the sequence where Thor just returned, and I'm level like probably like 10 to 13 with a couple characters, and Thor's back to level 1, and I'm just like, damn it,
Jesus, yeah.
And you're like, I feel like they give you a little bit more when you're reintroduced to certain characters and they're back at level 1, so they open with more abilities. But it's just like, I would prefer that they give me the option to have, to keep it at an equal level between all the characters. That way I feel like I'm able to step up to the challenge again, rather than having to go back and just, start grinding again. So that's what's frustrating. I think what my approach is probably going to be is that, because this game is designed to be multiplayer friendly, so the attention obviously feels split, than, what I would say like a Spider-Man PS4 would be, where it's just like we are making a single player experience. This is trying to be both a single player and a multiplayer experience, while doing what the Marvel Games crew has been trying to do consistently, which is give you a definitive playing experience for their characters.
Right.
They arguably did that with the PS4 Spider-Man, because that feels like a proper embodiment of Spider-Man, and honestly, that gave us one of the best Spider-Man stories in the last probably decade.
I can agree to that, honestly.
I think certain things like Spider-Verse kind of takes it over, but I think it is like, if you wanted to understand Spider-Man, that game is probably one of the places to go. And when the sequel, that's Miles Morales centered comes out, that's probably going to be the definitive Miles story that's not his origin. That's just an assumption on my part, but I mean, we'll see when that comes out with the PS5. But I'm holding off, writing off Avengers immediately, because I know that, looking at the rumored list of heroes to be added, and so far confirmed are both Hawkeye's, Clint Barton and Kate Bishop, and plus Spider-Man is a PS4 exclusive. So I'm going to wait to see what those additions do to this game. And before, I just don't want to throw it under the bus, because I really do like it, despite my slight frustrations. because like where Destiny ended up after that first game was completely different than what it started as, and that led to arguably probably one of the most popular first-person shooters of this current generation with Destiny 2. You know, like so much so that like what Bungie's doing is, or has done, is just created a console MMO along the lines of World of Warcraft that is probably going to continue on.
Yeah.
The more the consoles evolve and crossplay becomes a little bit more common. So I don't know if I'm going to necessarily touch the multiplayer stuff. I think I'm more content to just do, just drop in, do some Avengers shit, and then, drop out to something else.
Sure.
Because that's what I feel like the game is built for right now.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a side game, right? Something you're just like, hey, I only want to play something for like an hour and a half. Let me pop in Avengers real quick and do some grinding, do some shit, and then, okay, now let me hop off and go back to whatever else you're playing. Like, let me go back to Ghosts, or let me go to here.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that's a opinion that can change the more we get content for this game. So I think like once we have a picture of whatever this story post launch is, because I feel like the obvious route is that they do Thanos in the Infinity Gauntlet, which is entirely possible. And like if you like imagine telling somebody, hey, you get to play your version of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, like that would be dope.
And you get to create your own team of Avengers that are going to save the world, and they're specific to what you want to play as. I think that's appealing to somebody. And I think that what they have done so far is strong enough to get us there. It's just a matter of waiting and seeing.
Yeah. So essentially what you're trying to say is that like a banana, that be appealing.
I don't want to say yes because then that's going to validate that pun.
And I don't think but I understand your confusion.
That joke doesn't even work. Does not work. Oh my God. Speaking of things that don't work though, my fiance and I watched the live action Mulan.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've heard bad things about that.
Yeah, it was kind of there.
So was it the whole thing that they were talking about where it's on Disney Plus that you already own, but you have to pay like $20 or $30 just to actually watch it?
So in order to, what they're calling it, Premier Access. I don't know if this is, we've talked about it before, so we don't know if this is something Disney is going to continue doing, but I think that they are, considering how much money they lost with the park closures due to the shelter in place and the pandemic. So I would foresee like Black Widow and a lot more of the Marvel movies ending up on this, so long as movie theaters are closed in the States. But you have to have a Disney Plus subscription, and to watch Mulan, you would have to go through their website, the Disney Plus website, and pay an additional fee of $29.99. But it's a one-time fee. You can access the movie whenever you want, but eventually it will come to Disney Plus. So Mulan is coming to Disney Plus subscribers at no additional cost December 4th.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm totally waiting then. Like
and my and Chelsea's opinion was that it was kind of just there. It's okay. There are certain things that are good, certain things that aren't good. I mean, they lose the music. There's no Mushu. There is a spirit animal, but it's not a dragon. It's a phoenix. And it, honestly, like my perception of it is that it is China by way of white feminism. So it is very much, you go girl type shit, and it's just like, I don't think it hits as well as the cartoon does. And, the cartoon has evolved into a trans bisexuality symbol amongst the their respective communities. And this movie is definitely neutered of that. Like the captain character from the cartoon, I believe his name is Shang.
I think so.
Yeah, he's essentially bifurcated into two different characters. One is played by Donnie Yen, who's great because it's Donnie Yen.
Because it's Donnie Yen, yeah.
Because it's Donnie Yen, and then there's like this vanilla ass, fake-ish romance character who has no chemistry with the actress playing Mulan. It's just very bland. Let me look up who plays Mulan. Anthony, filibuster for me.
So I'm filibustering for John while he looks up who plays the actress Mulan. I'm going to take the time just to thank you all, you loyal listeners, if you've made it this far through all of our nonsensical nonsense. We just want to say we appreciate you. And for all the new viewers who are sticking around and all the new listeners who are sticking around, again, John and I still appreciate your time. And hopefully you rate, subscribe, and let us know how we're fucking up your day.
Thank you for that filibuster. Yeah. Yifei Liu plays Mulan, and she's fine. There's a lot of controversy because she backed the Hong Kong police over the democracy protesters not too long ago, so much so that Disney has not let her do any of the press. Yeah. So that's something that a lot of people have kind of just been indifferent or are very frustrated with, because it's your lead actress is just literally implied down with democracy, which is interesting, but that's I feel like I'm putting myself into a situation I don't completely understand. It's just
so what you're trying to say is that, boy, is that ever a choice?
Boy, is it ever a choice, and it's all kinds of fucked up, just like this movie. There are some good things. The villain Boricon is played by Jason Scott Lee.
Oh yeah, isn't that the son to famous Mongolian Shaka?
Oh, good Lord.
No, but I understand your confusion.
I just realized the whole "oh Jesus Christ" and you say "no, I understand your confusion" is like a sitcom bit.
Yeah, that's why I keep doing it, John. So those recurring listeners are eventually get to the point where maybe once COVID lifts and we're super famous and we have a live show, there's gonna be a room full of people and you're gonna say, I'm gonna make an awful joke or something, and then you'll say Jesus Christ, and I go, no, and then the whole crowd will be like, but I understand your confusion. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, for that alone, I will acknowledge it because it will help your kind soul.
It's all about branding, baby.
All about the branding. So yeah, I think the villain was really cool. Jason Scott Lee gave a really great performance. There's also the hawk of the main villain is turned into a witch that shapeshifts in this movie.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that in the trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find her name, which I will be doing in a moment because I have the thing right in front of me still. Gong Li plays her, and she the story that they give that character is pretty fascinating, but it's just like the rest of the movie, it's juxtaposed off of Mulan, who, if we look at what the animated cartoon was and the themes going into there and how it's her pushing back against the patriarchal nature of both Chinese society and society as a whole, it just kind of feels flawed, because at the end of the day, it feels like Mulan is just fighting to keep her place and not necessarily advocate for change.
Right.
Which is what I feel like the cartoon is maybe not directly going for, but ends up indirectly going at.
Yeah.
But it was okay, but I wouldn't recommend paying the $29.99 for it.
Yeah, no way, man.
Also, Jet Li's in this movie.
Really?
He's the Emperor.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, no, and it totally works because Jet Li's still great, but it's just Jet Li's in this, cool, but it's neither here nor there, because the movie as a whole just kind of flutters.
Yeah.
It feels like it brought up a good question between my fiance and I on when have any of these live action adaptations of Disney animated films worked.
Boy,
And we couldn't think of a solid answer because like Lion King clearly does not, because
I didn't see it.
yeah, and it's a completely CG movie. It's still technically animated, and therefore you're just re-recording the animated film, adding another half hour and using different actors outside of James Earl Jones.
I didn't see the Aladdin one either.
I did, and it adds a little bit more for Jasmine and a subplot for Genie, but arguably, it's like the only
Beauty and
thing.
the Beast was fine. The one with Emma
Watson,
Watson. Thank you.
Hermione herself.
It was fine. That one was okay. I guess the only one that you could say that made a significant dent, you could argue that was good, was the Maleficent movies with Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, and arguably, I think that's what kind of started this, if not, Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah,
because what Maleficent does is is an inversion of Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a Sleeping Beauty adaptation. It's just like you mentioned, an inverse of that. And that was I personally didn't see the second one. My wife did. She said it was good, but I enjoyed the first one for what it was.
Yeah. So, and I think that's like the one time it seemed like it was a good idea, but I think just Disney has taken the wrong lesson from it and is just strip mining their animated archive to turn into live action fodder, which maybe might change considering COVID and critical review. That's all I could think.
Speaking of things that I can only think of, John.
Yes.
I can only think of at this point telling you about what I'm playing.
Yes, please.
I am currently between two games still. When I play on my PS4, I'm still playing Fell Seal Arbiter's Mask. It's still a really great game. I spoke on it in depth last time, so I won't go into too much depth, but it's a Final Fantasy Tactics spiritual successor, which I appreciate and I love. It's really fun. I'm having a great time customizing characters. I just got the ability to where you can tame monsters. So when I'm fighting monsters, I can now tame them and they become part of my squad. So that's pretty freaking cool. That opens up a new little avenue. And outside of that, for my Xbox, I am playing Valkyria Chronicles 4. And it is a JRPG strategy game set in a alternate world, World War II.
Mm-hmm.
It's the continent of Europa instead of Europe, but it's essentially taking place, and you have the essentially it's a world war between the Atlantic Federation, which are the good guys, and the autocratic Eastern Imperial Alliance, which are the bad guys. That's your Nazi Germany to the freedom fighters of the West in World War II. It's very JRPG inspired. Like there's a lot of your anime tropes and things like that with these characters, but it actually works, and they actually take on a lot of social issues. Like I just did a side story where there's a character who is a transgender character who goes by the name of Rosetta, and there's a whole little subplot between that. And what I appreciate about this world is that it's not like a huge thing like, oh my God, this is, a person who's transitioning. It's just like an accepted thing. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's who this person is. Yeah, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And again, there's a lot of little moments like that where it's just like nice, sweet, tender character moments and character development. And this and it follows really like the leader of this squad, and he has the two little like sub commanders who's driving the main story. But if you get to a certain rank of your side characters, of your squad characters, then you get unlocked, like I said, these side missions where it goes into their character development. And so overall, it's a nice, really character-driven story with a very good strategy game. Because again, you're with rifles and machine guns and a tank, so you have to kind of sneak behind your enemy, and you have to do all these tactic things. It's a very creative system, and I'm really much enjoying it. I've been playing that for a while. I'm on, I think, chapter 5 as we speak. So overall, I highly recommend it, especially if you're looking for something that's a light strategy game that tells a pretty good like anime story.
Okay.
And again, like I said, I like the alternate. Now this is number 4, so there have been more games in this series that I have never played.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little worried coming into that, but this game does a good job of just kind of it's one of those like Star Trek episodes that we talked about in previous episodes, where it's like it just kind of drops you in and you're introduced to the characters. You don't really need to know what happened on the last week's episode to know what's going on in this week's episode. And by that I mean number 3 of Valkyria Chronicles as opposed to this 4th one. So overall, I highly recommend it. I'm playing it for Xbox, but it's on PS4. It's on computer. I believe it's even on the Nintendo Switch, which would be an interesting way to play it. But those are the 2 games that I am playing, John.
Now, Anthony, what are you not playing anymore, though?
Oh, I am not playing Wastelanders 3 because of the fact that it keeps goddamn crashing. And because of the fucking fact, yeah, I dropped the F-bomb, so sorry, we're going to have to put an E by this. But
we were doing that a long time ago.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let your flag fly.
It got to the point where I was like a few hours in, and I was even with this game while it was still crashing, John. I was like, okay, it rebooted, whatever, it's fine. I'll just pick up from my last save, which, by the way, even after the current patch that they just dropped like a day or 2 ago, it's still crashing at least like once an hour for some of the people that are still playing this game.
That's not good.
But it got to the point where I had one of my squad mates I started with, I swapped them out just to experience a different character, just to see something, to test something. And I come back to swap out my original character back into the squad, and they took away all my skills that I spent 5 hours leveling up and crafting, and they took them all away and put it back to like a default state. But still kept the level. So it was like level 8, but like no skills of a level 8 character should have that I spent time and dedication to putting into it. So since I got to that point, I've been tempted to go back because I was enjoying what was going on with it. And I know that essentially I just would not swap out characters at that point. I would just keep my main squad of, 4 characters.
Right.
But boy, John, that like broke. And I remember off air texting you about this. It just broke me. And I got so pissed. And I was like, I'm done. Like I literally restarted this game like 20,000 times to reroll, to respect. And then I got to that point where I was finally getting happy with my characters. And I do a little test like that to bring in a different character, swap them out. And it just fucking does that to me.
Yeah, that's not a pleasant experience. I would not want to. I wouldn't even contemplate going back to it after that. It's just like, it sounds like it's whatever's happening is something that is evading their ability to resolve.
Yeah, and it's a huge, and again, this is just one major bug. And again, I already mentioned the game crashing once an hour at least bug that should have been fixed a long time ago. But it's just another thing where, look, game developers, I beg you, just take your time with these games. Like, take your time, do what you got to do, and release a product that's not going to crash on you. And if it does that, we'll release a patch that actually fixes these issues.
Yeah. So like I know that, we kind of partially shit on Avengers to a certain extent, but when that game first came out, they put out a giant patch that said, okay, it's going to fix all the major things that you guys identified in the beta. We're going to try and make it better and more efficient and streamlined. But I think what you also got to consider too is that, sometimes the developers aren't necessarily in the complete ability to decide. We have larger corporate owners, like Marvel. And
yeah, I get
that's a different thing. That's a different thing, but
I understand that, and yes, you're 100% right. Where it is a business at the end of the day, and it's the Knights of the Republic 2 model, where it's like we have to release this at this particular day and time, and I get that. But when you put out a game that's crashing on you and you don't really give a day one patch, like even with Avengers, at least they did the day one patch, right?
Yeah.
But you're not even releasing a patch to where you fix this continuous crash kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's unacceptable.
No. Yeah. At a certain point, it just, it stops being the rationale stops being acceptable, and you just have
at some point you got to hold these people accountable for their actions of that, right? Like I'm all forgiving, and I'm trying to be an understanding person when it comes to like this kind of a topic, but at the end of the day, they still have to own it, and they still have to be responsible and held accountable.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I have one other thing
Ooh.
We watched another movie
Okay.
that I'm pretty sure you've watched many a time. We watched A Knight's Tale.
Oh, yeah.
Can we just talk about how great that fucking movie is?
So I'm guessing it still holds up.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Alan Tudyk is the best side character in that movie. It has one of the great improvised scenes in any cinematic history. The scene where, Vision, the actor who plays Vision. Paul Bettany, where Paul Bettany's giving that lengthy speech, like really bolstering up Heath Ledger's character, and the crowd is like silent. And then that side character is like, yay. That was totally improvised. And that was actually like...
We looked into that, and apparently it was the extras were like Czech natives who did not speak any English. So they literally didn't understand what the hell was going on. And then Mark Addy, who played that sidekick Roland, and later became Robert Baratheon in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
For those folks at home who want to play internet bingo or something.
Play Ludic Lounge Jeopardy.
I think internet bingo is going to be the name of this episode.
Yeah, that's probably better.
I mean, to be honest, we're hitting every single thing you can think of across the
I would say we should probably have the titular put like the name of the comic we're reviewing, and then semicolon or colon.
Internet bingo.
Internet bingo.
There we go. That was some shop talk.
Yes.
But yeah, they didn't understand what Paul Bettany was saying, and then Mark Addy did his, and then they get, we're supposed to cheer.
Yeah. Which is amazing. I'm so glad they kept that in and didn't reshoot that, because it makes that scene that much better.
I think a personal favorite of mine is one of those moments where Paul Bettany is doing those introductions for Ledger's character, and there's one where at the end where he just goes, "Man, I'm good."
Yeah,
I just appreciated that so much.
All of those characters in there, just amazing.
Absolutely. And like Heath Ledger is 21 goddamn years old in that movie, and he's just so freaking good.
Yeah,
it's such a damn shame what happened. Yeah. Just 7 years later, he's gone.
Yeah,
it's like, because I looked at when I was watching it, it was just like he's got some, and part of this is probably because they're both Australian, but it's like he's got some Hemsworth vibes in that movie at times. So like, and Hemsworth is great at comedy, which I wish everyone is seeing more because of Thor Ragnarok. But I wish that was something that was done more, just a little bit more action comedies.
That's kind of a dying. I mean, you have comedic moments in action movies now, but not necessarily like action comedy genre.
Yeah, I just want something a little bit like more balanced like this. I think where it's just like you're right. You do get those those comedy moments in action movies, but they're like it's all just about the action. This felt more like it was equal play between the two.
Yeah,
which is what I appreciated on this revisit.
And speaking of things I appreciate, John.
Yes, Anthony.
Is I appreciate how only you can send us off into that beautiful sunset on this YouTube page and on our audio format for those of us who only listen via the vehicle of podcasts.
For those who don't want to see our gorgeous, gorgeous faces, and mostly Anthony's chest hair.
Oh, so much chest hair in this episode. So much.
All chest hair. Ladies, gentlemen, and gentle folk, you have been listening to another episode of the Ludic Loungecast. We hope you go out to your local comic book stores and pre-order Commanders in Crisis #1. Get that book
now.
Do it now. Get the book. Read it now. Anything is good for you. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger saying goodbye. Now, to take it back from Arnold, thank you for lounging with us, ladies, gentlemen, and good folk. Good night.
Bye.
Oh yeah. This is Al Pacino on behalf of the Ludic Loungecast. Come on now with the podcasting. Wow, yeah. You need more, yeah. Follow us on Twitter at Ludic Lounge. Oh yeah. Antonicus is at RoboLoco44. John is at just_John 0891. Oh yeah. Lounge at gmail.com. Come on now.